Espinosa with the Business Excellence Group, and we're going to discuss today how we're going to be able to improve your overall level of service in your inventory, which means that you will increase your sales and you will be able to have a better predictability on what inventory to carry and how to really provide service to your customers. So the first thing that I want to explain, and we didn't went through this in the our discussion, but I think it's appropriate to go through that now, is how the model of planning resources works. So basically, is four elements that creates this predictability. One that is very important is the monthly forecast. And I want to emphasize the monthly forecast because some companies only do that once a year, and that's something that is a disadvantage because then you cannot react or promote certain items or really drive your sales in an effective way. And that's the basis where most companies, and I would say all the companies in the world use to then predict what materials they need to fulfill that sales forecast. So right now you are reacting, you are looking into 8 weeks in the past and trying to secure X amount of weeks of actual sales in your inventory. However, the problem with that model is that if you have an event where you have a peak of sales, then you're going to be depleted, and that's all good and great. But due to the length of your lead times, that prevents you to react, and basically you are losing 3, 4, or even 5 months being unable to fulfill or refulfill or respond to new demand. So again, this is the adopted MRP system principles that your NetSuite uses and that eventually you will have to be adopting. So as I said, these four elements. One is all starts with the monthly sales forecast that feeds the elements of materials that you need to be planning to procure. And again, some companies do this analysis in a weekly basis. Some companies do that in a daily basis, changing mix and volume. So it's not rare. It can be done in a weekly basis, but as a minimum in a monthly basis. However, this plan needs to be reviewed by the materials team. I would say weekly basis, so you can understand the trends and what items are getting more demand or what adjustments you need to do. So the other element of a good planning system is to have your bill of materials, basically your approved vendor list in place, your usage factors, of course the correct part numbering, and updated lead times. This is very important. You need to have a process where every time you place a PO, your lead times are reconfirmed, and especially right now in after coming out of the pandemic situation with COVID, some of these lead times are extending. So you need to make sure that you capture what is the latest standard lead time, and this is not rare or strange to vendors. They know that the longer the lead time, the more material you need to be stocking, and the shorter lead time, the less you should be carrying. But at the same time, that will dictate how good you can be predicting your material planning. Multiple order quantities, in other words, what is the size of that you can be buying from the customer. Some customers the number is the lot size is also called in another with another companies. But it's important to know what is the minimum order quantity that you can buy from your vendor. Ideally is one, right? and also your standard cost. Some companies has also loaded the last purchase price. Some other companies drive their targets even lower, establishing a target pricing for the items. So that's another topic for another discussion, but that's another element that fits into this system that we're going to be suggesting. The other part is to have a good ECN, or engineering change notification, or model changes or transitions between products. And that the biggest element of that is to have a good system such that everybody's aware, and you can avoid to create excess, or avoid to start selling items before you deplete the previous revision of the selling item, and that is managed and achieved doing the proper financial impact analysis. Okay, so the next element of the system is your inventory position, and that's basically understanding what is your on hand position at all times, what orders you have scheduled to arrive or planned to arrive, and have a good FIFO system where, as I said, based on the revisions and models, you have a good visibility of and the methodology with your warehouse or your 3PL to make sure that you are using a good FIFO methodology. And of course, a good cycle count and have at minimum a 99% accuracy in your inventory. So we're going to be coming back to this model to explain what we're trying to do here. So as we discussed in our call, so let's go and review how this can work. This is a proposal, and I think that there is elements that you can adopt in a gradual way for that will merge and complement your existing methodology. So the first thing that we did is we took your historical data. So this is a way to also predict the future, is to see what you actually did in 2020. So we put in place with your team this forecast. So we kind of organized it in all the elements, all the items that you sold in last year, and even very good, we were able to see what is the actuals for January, February, March of this year. That's gold, because you can actually create, as we discussed, these materials resource planning, right? That projection of master plan. Okay, so so from there also we got these numbers, the sales numbers, or the project the actual numbers that you sold last year, and then you also provided the part numbers and what are the substitution or changes that you foresee to happen in your products and models. So this is very good information. You have a very solid basis to start driving a better plan. So let's jump on exactly what we need to do. So as I said, the first thing that we did was to review your forecast by part number. We actually were able to understand what were the actual numbers that you sold in every month, and then we added a certain standard price, a selling price. So we were trying to look for the goals that you are looking for. So last year, all included with this price, and I think it changes through the year, so that's what is not that accurate. We were able to come out with $156 million, and that difference from 156 to 170 could be for different factors. Most likely will be the selling price, right? So no big deal. What we want to obtain here is to understand the seasonality in your sales, and as we can see, the first 3 months of the year were pretty low, and then you start like climbing back and to then stabilize from May all the way through October, and then you start seeing some decline. But for the most part, and this year was 2020 was a COVID year, so it's very untypical, but we can see that you have certain seasonality. So we can, what we're going to be proposing here, you can actually implement in every quarter. Some companies do that. Instead of planning the entire year, they establish rates and plan their sales based on every quarter, because some products are much more seasonable than others, right? So let's keep that in mind when you're trying to implement in your organization. What we will be trying to do is to really understand what works best for you. So from there, so what we need to, once we understand the historical information, what we need to see, and I was asking for this information to your team, was what is the plan for 2021? What is our existing sales plan? And since I couldn't find it, what we need to do is create one. And basically, like if things remain the same in terms of volumes and your let's say your distribution channels, it's pretty predictable that you're going to be increasing your sales in a linear way. It's a big bet, but it's a good starting point when you don't have a sales plan in place. So what we did basically is we factored all the quantities, and we created a 2021 sales plan based on volume. So the quantities were just added, as I said, linearly. And what I did in this proposition was to try to reach at least the $205 million. But of course, if you want to increase this number, you just need to go here and you can increment the volume and just understand what is how can you get to your 280 or 270, whatever the number or your target is. And then I will suggest that at some point we will need to be discussing how to engage the sales team to really drive this. As I said, the core and the heart of every company actually is to have a solid sales forecast with some level of accuracy, so you can actually plan the resources and materials accordingly. So once we have that, once we completed this, let's say sales plan, right? Again, what we care, I'm going to put it back what it was. What we care is the volume and quantities, so we can create what I call the procurement plan. So that's hand to hand, and if I think at some point you will have to be transitioning to a full MRP execution. So the first input that they will ask you is this forecast, and how you manage your demand is going to be key, and how you can actually serve your sales or support your sales. So we did that. So that's the step number one. We created now. So from the analysis of, as I put it here, from the analysis of 2020, which is the step number 0, we go and create what the master production schedule, the MPS, right here in the bottom, right? The MPS, or master production schedule. So, assuming that that's the case, I would suggest that plan of we're gonna be driving to discuss with sales how we can formalize this plan, and then after that, right, we can do this by region, etc., and have several plans that back up this one to create a master plan for the whole organization with all the inputs, with all the regions and all the sales team, and have this formalized. Once we have that, the next step is to as we discussed, based on these equivalence matrix, what we need to do is to really have a good process to do these transitions. Because if we don't do that, we will be procuring items or materials of obsolete products, or we basically won't be able to source these, because my understanding is that these changes are dictated by your manufacturer. So anyway, so what we need to make sure that happens, and I think you have that in place, is that you have, and that was the question that I was asking you before, is do we have a good a system where we really monitor the revisions and versions of the products, and a good ECM process? And the answer was yes. So we discussed that it's very convenient to have in this master plan those changes, and understand what is the transition connected to volume. Is very, very important, because otherwise you will be probably you are monitoring a good sales in some products, and if you don't account for depleting another product, an older version, then again you will create excess in your inventory, and that's cash, and that's money, and that's write-offs that are normally very painful for companies to deal with. So once we have that in one place, and very visual, the next step, and let me just review a couple items with you very fast. What you need to do is to make sure that those items are analyzed in a way that, as I said, we create the demand in time, by quantity, by month. So for instance, these two items, this item is going to be transitioning from dash 03 to dash M1. So what I did is I look for this item, and I just put it on the side, and then I start checking what are the sales projected, and if I know when this model is going to kick in or transition, then I can define, okay, I'm going to drive 3 months, and my suggestion is to say, okay, we're going to identify what months are active demand, and then from what time on that demand of the new part number is going to be effective, and that way you can have a very clear understanding when a model is substituted by others. So let me do a quick example here. So assuming that this was effective by day one, what you need to do is really consolidate the demand, and what you do is you add these two inputs, and creates the let's say the consolidated demand, right, all the way for the year, and then that becomes the new demand for the new item. And what you need to do is just really establish that demand for the item that is going to be, let's say, the stable one, or is going to be taking over the market. And then you go back and you basically zero the rest of the previous or the obsolete item, right? So it's a very manual process. It's no different in other industries, and some others have Baylor or some other PLM, like product lifetime management systems, where they can control the approvals and all that. Actually, I want to show you what I was discussing with you in the meeting, that this is an ECN from another client. I just blurred the name of the company. We basically when every engineer changing happens, the product engineer takes into account if it can be a substitution, that if need to be, if the material can be used as is, if there is a rework and upgrade that needs to be done, right? And in the ECN, this financial impact analysis is done. And for instance, in this case, the material can be done and used as is, but if it needs to be reworked or inspected or add certain items, a cable or whatever, then needs to be reflected here, and then the dollars that will be incurred is estimated by the product engineer. So I just wanted to bring that up because I see that you have so many transitions, and you need to really be very careful to, and that your product engineers are doing a good job, especially on transition the demand as I explained. So for instance, in this case, this other product is going to be obsolete. So I marked that in red, right? And this is going to be transitioning to this item. So, but this demand is actually needs to be loaded to the new product that is below, and it's very important that when we do that, as I said, we do a good transition analysis. So just a detail, but I think that is very important that that's understood and driven. And then once you do that and you understand what are the effectivity days of the transitions, then you can actually clean up your forecast again. And some of the questions that you made, if the sales forecast is dynamic, is totally dynamic. It's alive. The production plan and the forecast and the procurement plan are dynamic. And as I said, it's in a weekly basis or by event where you need to be updating it. And then this demand needs to be updated and planned to be procured or not. We're gonna get there in a moment, but I just want to make sure that we need to, as I said, establish the forecast, the sales forecast, and then do understand what are the transitions in models, and then clean up again. Or that's the step number 3 of the master production schedule. As I said, ECN and financial impact analysis are the step that we need to follow. And then once we have that, the next step is to maintain that plan. Basically maintain that plan, continue cleaning the transitions, updating the demand forward. I'm not sure if you have the N-Suite demand management module that can generate requirements, but let me just go there for a minute. Once if you have all these in place, the master production schedule, the BOMs, ECN system, and a good inventory, so the planning or the PO placement, the system, the MRP suggests the planned orders that you need to be releasing to maintain your inventory level. So we're gonna go there in a minute, but that's the goal. Okay, so that's how important this is. Okay, so as I said, the next step is to establish those changes. We clean and maintain our production plan. So the next step is to say, okay, what are the actuals? How are we doing versus that plan, right? Because we're going to be procuring material based on the on this plan. So we need to be monitoring the actual units sold per month. And as I said, as we close every month, typically a week after the closing, or even the following week when you close the books, the team needs to go back and retweak the plan and do the following. So you put the actuals versus the plan, and what you do, and I'm suggesting this for you to do, is to capture those actual volumes by unit, and then establish what is the delta in terms of units sold versus planned versus actual, right? Deltas versus the forecast. So once you do that, what you have to do and this is the essence of what MRP system does. What you need to do is say, okay, my lead time is, for the worst items that you have, your lead time is in average like 5 months. So let's assume that you give me information until March. So I'm closing March and understanding what is my demand going from April on. So what I do is I said, okay, I cannot be modifying the next 3 months, right? But if I load in August my demand, then the vendors could be, they won't see any requirements, because for them, they will tell you, hey, come back in May. So I can, if you actually want material for August, and my lead time is 5 months, then come back in May so we can talk, and then we can start talking about what I'm going to be delivering to you in August. So what I typically do with companies that we implement this type of systems when they don't have a good MRP system in place is to pull in 1 month. Just go 1 month, 1 month less than the longest lead time. And I'm just talking about the longest items. Of course, these line items are different. Some of them are batteries. Some of them are inverters. Some of them are different items. So the lead time changes. But I'm just talking about the worst case. So in those items, the plan will be to refulfill or backfill whatever upside you did. So one of the things that we want to bring into your process is that, for instance, this item right here, you planned. If we look at what was the plan or the forecast, assuming that forecast was released by sales, you didn't have any plans to sell in the three initial months any of those items. So, however, luckily you sell quite a bit of them. So, what is the reaction to that? So you sold 1,953 items that were not planned. Probably you had excess of that or surplus of that, and or a good position inventory on that. So what you need to do is say, okay, I need to add those back in July. So what this little formula is doing in Excel, and you have this spreadsheet in your intranet, is basically adding back whatever was above of the forecast. So this also helps because Jody or the CEO or the board of directors will say, okay, we have a budget of spend budget based on the sales forecast, right? The procurement forecast, and if we refulfill the items that we oversold, we're still within that policy, right? We won't be exceeding the number or the quantity of items that we're gonna bring, but we refulfill and we restock in a good position in July. So this is gonna be a little of pull-in for the vendors because you will be demanding items that they normally will give you commits for August, but you need to do that. Otherwise, you will never catch up. So as I said, you backfill a month less than the longest lead time or the standard lead time for the item, and you refulfill. And look at this. If you didn't sold, like for instance, in this case, you sold less, almost, like almost 2,000 items less than projected is right here. 1,883 items less than the projection. In that case, only these 84 items are replenished. So in other words, we cannot do much with the material that we already have planned, but we are adding back what we oversold. So we respect or we support our sales team no pushing out the negatives. In some organizations, the MRP will question and say, hey, do you want to reschedule this? Should we, I mean, if you will have some orders that are pending to arrive, the system will tell you based on the forecast if you need to reschedule and push out some of the orders. In this case, we are assuming, okay, we are not pushing them. We are just saying, okay, whatever you oversold, we need to replenish here. And basically, if you look at the numbers for July, originally, let me look at the what we are asking for 12,591. Originally, we had for July, right? We're gonna check, and we are asking. Let me just mark this line so we don't lose track of what we're looking for here. Let me see. We were looking for 12,591, and in the original plan for July, we were asking for 1579, right? So we are actually adding only those 85 pieces, 84 pieces that we oversold in March. So that's the proposition, right? You can do this review manually. And so what we do next? What is the next step to do? So once you have that injected into your demand, then the next plan is to say, okay, what is my to link this system with your existing practice. What I'm proposing to do is establish a maximum and minimum system. So this is a step-by-step spreadsheet. So the next step that I did was, okay, this is I used to use a term that is called weekly forecasted volume, and that is basically the total volume of the year divided by 12 multiplied by 4. Like every quarter is normally 13 weeks, so we are talking about just take out 1 week out of the plan. So if you multiply 12 weeks by 4, we're talking about 48 weeks total instead of 52 because of the vacations and some Chinese New Year and such and such. So your weekly forecasted volume for that item is this one, right? So and look the difference. Instead of just taking into account the past 8 weeks, this is actually the total volume that your sales team is committing to sell. The actual realized sales that they did within the initial 3 months of the year, right? Because this is added back into here, is this quantity here that we are using to calculate the weekly forecasted volume includes the plan from April on, but also includes the pickups that you have done in the year. So this is adjusting the actual weekly requirements, the weekly forecasted volumes with actual data and accounting for the future demand. So this will be more proactive than your existing practice. And from these, you can do all kinds of things. And you have what I suggest to do is do an analysis by item, right? Understanding the weekly forecasted volume. What is the actual lead time? In this case, I put 20 weeks, which is 5 months, right? Worst case scenario. But of course, if it's a rack system, it's going to be probably 2 months. It's not 20 weeks, it's probably 8 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever it is. And then you establish a safety stock. So this safety stock account, and we discussed that for the pre-processing and post-processing lead time. So you add to the 20 weeks 2 extra weeks to be in the safe side. And then based on that, and an MOQ, you establish a minimum inventory level. That minimum inventory level is an easy calculation. Basically, it's lead time in weeks multiplied by volume, weekly volume, right? So our minimum quantity is 41 pieces. Our maximum quantity then is adding the buffer stock that we discussed, that is to be 2. So it's obvious is we are adding other 4 units, right, for the 2 weeks if the usage is 2. So our number will be to control our inventory level from 41 to 45 units. And some companies, the policy is to always be in the max. Some companies that are in growing mode, and probably is the case of you guys, you need to be driving your POs, and your PO placement policy should be to meet always the minimum volume in your warehouses. So the signal is when you are below 45, then boom, you go and place as per the MOQ. For simplicity, I put the MOQ at 1. This is by item, and you need to understand that part. But as I said, the policy, if you are in a growing mode and you want to reach your 270 million, whatever the number is, I will suggest that you use the maximum as the trigger. Some other companies that wants to be more conservative, they actually use, they go in the middle. So they basically establish a reordering point that is in the middle of these two, the minimum and maximum. And every time they go to that threshold, they go and replenish to reach the maximum, right? So this is another possibility for you, but we will be discussing that more in detail in the days to come. So from there, this analysis also should have the cost per unit, the MOQ. I don't know that information. I'll be working with your team to populate this correctly. But based on that, the cost of the material, and if the item is a sole source, which is very critical, we need to know that if we have a sole source, and I think that most of your inverters has that sole source, and those brands that you carry, then if that's the case, then you need to be changing the policy to say, okay, I'm going to be, some other companies, by the way, they drive, they don't trigger POs until they reach the minimum. And because they want to go very slim in their inventory. So, but this is what is known as the plan for every part. So every part is different. So you cannot have the same policy of placement for every item, but has to do with all these factors, right? All these, let's say, specifics of every component. So that makes me go to the next topic. And I think that will be enough for this video to discuss a little bit about what is ABC, because while we discuss in this matrix per item in terms of the volume requirement, the MOQs, of course, based on the lead time and consumption, what are the minimum and maximum, the cost of the component, how critical it is, if it's a sole source or not. Based on that, you establish your stratification that is called, right, ABC. And what is that? In a high level, basically, and as a rule of thumb, the 8 items are placed weekly. And the reason why is because they are sole source, right? And I'm sorry I did this randomly, but normally if it's a sole source and it's a long lead time and it's a high cost item that will drive your inventories high, whatever it is, then the PO placement happens weekly. So that is like I give to my customers the example to say, like, okay, you cannot have, like, if you love I would say I don't know, some alcohol that is very expensive, I don't know, champagne or whatever, You rather go and buy a weekly than have your cava, right, or have a big inventory of liquor, depends. But the 8 items are high dollar, long lead time, sole source. So the policy of, or if you drive minimum, if you drive the maximum, if you drive a point in between, changes based on the characteristics of every item, right? So as I said, this is the 8 items are placed weekly. They are analyzed. They are analyzed in a separate way with supply demands, 30, 60, 90-day supply, specifically to understand when you have gaps in your supply. And as I said, normally these items are high demand, or they drive most of our sales forecast. So those 8 items has this special treatment, and normally you put the better or the most experienced planners, buyer planners, to deal with those items. The B items are still high dollar, but the lead times are shorter, or they're local. In other words, that you don't need to be placing POs every week, because normally you will be using Kanban as the solution, right? You do agreements with your local vendor, the lead times are shorter, you can react, and the technique is establish a Kanban system so that when you reach certain of these points in quantities, you go and replenish. And this is used by Toyota, and this is a big relief on cash if you get this, because you can actually just pay per usage. I mean, I normally implement this where the vendors, they come to me once I use their parts, and they consign inventory in our facilities, or other type of agility techniques, right? With them, they hold some inventory in their premises as well. So there is different ways to attack the B items. And then the C items are items that are low cost, and they're normally commodities like screws and things that you can buy anywhere. And and you can actually, what you want is to place orders every quarter if possible, because you want your guys to be focused on the big rotation and high dollar items, right? So that's very important, that out of this initiative we get to stratify the items, and we probably reassign the items based on expertise and based on dollars, right? Not only in busyness, right? Not only because this vendor is keep me busy or such, but where the money is, or where the sales or the commitments are for our sales are bigger. So that's pretty much what I want to discuss at this point. If you see, all is connected, and this analysis carries a lot of information, but that's a proposal that I wanted to bring up, and I think you guys liked it, and I think we can start implementing some of these items very, very fast. So just answering your questions very quickly. The questions that you asked me were, how do you suggest to deal with the adjustments and new versions? The answer is ECNs. You need to have a solid engineering change system to really do the replacement. And as I said, make sure that you have in one place all the information, and you can see the transitions in quantities, and you plan for that. I show you that in this piece, on the ECN piece, once we identify the volumes and everything, when we say, okay, we can go, I have one item that I wanted to show you, where, for instance, this item on the bottom here, some of the demand, we can say, okay, it's going to be January through March, the active demand, and then after April, then other 3 months going to be the other item, and then finally at the very end of the year, that's going to be the demand for this item. So this visual way to have everything in one place and see all these depleting profiles or this waterfall is the way to go. If you do something different than this, this is already complex. This is already something that companies struggle with. But if you don't do this type of analysis, you will struggle to really minimize your excess and make sure that you don't have gaps in your supply. So what is the best way to deal with unknown demand? Projection. I mean, the demand is unknown for sure, but you have a group of people that is the sales group, and they need to be. I mean, if you are talking about doing partnership with your vendors, you have to be able to do those partnerships with them and support them and make of your sales force somebody that will be have an intelligence to understand that demand. We need to go with premises. We need to go and project based on historical. So the best way to deal with unknown demand is to project based on historical data and monitor in weekly, monthly basis the performance. And based on that, as I said in here, modify your demand and your weekly rates, your weekly forecasted volume will be changing based on these actuals, right? So that's the best way to do it. There is no other way. In some degree, no demand is known. All these car dealers, you will see the parking lots right now, how they are like bursting is because they run with forecast. So the proposition is to have a hybrid system where you do this MPS, you hold accountable your sales organization to try to meet these numbers that you are projecting with. But at the same time, when you monitor the performance in this way, right, checking what units are you really selling, right, per month, this conciliation per month is something that you need to implement and have those conversations with sales in the room. And really that's the only way that you can actually grow to the numbers that you want to grow, when you have an organization in sales that is accountable for the numbers and team up with materials, of course. Question 3, how does the sales response when we ask for validated sales forecast? Normally, that's the hardest job in any organization. To be in sales, those guys are, in my experience, the best paid, the most how to say, like, valuable people is that the ones that make alliance with clients and all that. How they respond, if it's a good salesperson, they understand the criticality and they don't go and protest because the material teams doesn't have the material on in the warehouse. They actually work with you to make sure that you have the information you need to plan. If they understand that you have a 5-6 month lead time and you have all kinds of problems with the taxes, I mean import taxes and the logistics and all that, the better they are, the more aware they are that they need to help you to understand the visibility of the forecast. What are the information we can provide them? You can give them this template. Just give them this template and say, hey, tell me, or you can do like a distributed file where they will commit to this. And normally the performance appraisal for a salesperson and their income is based on the forecast compliance. So it's really not a bad move to do. It's just the transition where your company needs to do. Should we? So the question is, should we focus on few key items? Yes, the answer is yes, and that's why ABC is so critical, because not all items are born equal. So when you do this ABC, then you will be focusing more in these high dollar, long lead time items, sole source, right? So we answered that question as we went through this presentation. Then the first question of Isidro was forecasting, is the forecast sales demand static or dynamic? So I answered that question through this presentation. We need to review this in a weekly basis. We need to review this, conciliate the numbers with sales every month, and that's how dynamic it is. Okay, what is the cadence of change? I would say weekly. I had some clients in my operations that they give me demand every day. Yeah, I know. That was crazy, and we scream and we kick and scream and all that. That's it. That's the trend, because time is money. So yeah, so it's dynamic, and it's as frequently as we can do, as we can go. And especially with the lead times that you have. Question number 5, what kind of complexity does the multiple warehouse add to the process? Really, I understand that you have a process to set up your warehouses based on the end market. So what is the complexity that is add? You normally give this plan for every part. Actually, you need to be probably adding here the regions and establish minimum per location, so you can actually do this plan or this tab per warehouse, right? And then consolidate. The planner will know what are the minimum in each location, and make decisions on where and when to place PO. So the trick is that if you give the good ownership, clear ownership and limitation of responsibility to a planner buyer, it doesn't matter. For him, it's just quantities and locations. He doesn't add much complexity. It's just another input in their matrix to account for, in my experience. Okay, so. Let me just so that's it for the presentation. As I said, this is a initial transition and concepts that are relative to getting to a full transition to an MRP. And you have the hardest part. I face a lot of clients that they don't have in an MRP. So in that case, we need to go and do really wild assessments and don't have the ability to have this type of projections. But you already have the biggest piece, which is the end suite, and I think it's a powerful tool. And I hope that we will be implementing this in your existing system. And I think that there is nothing, no limits what we can do when you have that engine in your hands. So I hope that this training was useful. I will be posting this in your intranet, and I hope that we will continue working towards making your organization more and more successful each time. So thank you so much, and talk to you soon.